Well, hello everybody, a very warm welcome to my channel, Louise Savage Muses. Welcome back if you are a returning viewer, and an equally warm welcome if you are visiting the channel for the first time. I hadn't expected to be doing a book haul vlog this month because I wasn't anticipating doing much book shopping, but life has a habit of catching you out, and the month's sort of kicked off to this fantastic start. Well, actually it was last month technically, end of this month, the fantastic Booker bookshop opened in Bridgnorth. So I now have an amazing local bookshop, absolutely gorgeous, and I picked up a few books from there when I nipped in there again the other day. So first and foremost, I'll share those with you. The trouble is I go into Bridgnorth once a week usually, so the temptation is going to be now to go and acquire more books, but I'm not going to apologise for that anyway. So first of all, bearing in mind it's non-fiction November, I picked up Sinead O'Connor's Rememberings. Now this didn't really come to my attention much at the time. I don't know why. In fact, I'm not even sure when it came out. I have to grab my big goggles. Where are we? When did it come out? 2021, so it's a couple of years ago. As some of you may be aware, Sinead O'Connor, fantastic voice, singer, songwriter, but also lots of other things as well. And she sadly died recently. And I realised that I really didn't know much about her. Certainly she hadn't sort of come into my attention much since the 90s, which is probably my own ignorance. I did, as I always do when I'm buying books, I did dip in and read a few pages, and it's clear that it's really well written. So yeah, I just thought that might be quite an interesting thing to read in November. So hopefully I will manage to get around to reading that and be able to feed back, or maybe not, it might end up being next November the way I go, but I don't think that matters too much. So yeah, really intrigued by that. I absolutely love the cover photograph. There's something particularly poignant about it following her death, I think, because it's almost sculptural, isn't it, that photograph? You know, it really reminds me of a sort of beautifully sculpted face. Yeah, so it sort of memorialises her, I suppose, and of course the title, Remembering. And then I picked up a book that I hadn't come across either, a work of fiction, and this is by Paterson Joseph, who is an actor that I really admire. It's called The Secret Diaries of Charles Ignatius Sancho, and it sounds like a fantastic sort of historical romp. David Harewood loved it, fellow actor, praising him there. It says if you like The Miniaturist or Franny Langton, well, straight away that's me sold. You'll like this book. It's a story that was hidden for 300 years and is now coming to life. And there's a quote here, presumably from Charles Ignatius Sancho. I had little right to live, born on a slave ship where my parents both died, but I survived, and indeed, you might say I did more. So that's fascinating. 1746, sorry, I can't get my words out very well today. Georgian London, not a safe place for a black man, especially one who's escaped slavery. So it just sounds like a real, there's slave catchers, there's a kindly duke. I think that's a fantastic book that I'm going to get absolutely engrossed in. And I love the sparkle of the cover. It's feels very sort of, not festive exactly, but certainly, you know, it's got a luxurious zing to it. And then another work of historical fiction. There are so many times when I've hesitated over this book and almost bought it, and I've heard so many people rave about it online. When I say heard, I've seen. Cecily by Annie Garthwaite. This one goes further back in time, and that, I think that's what intrigues me about it most, actually, because in terms of historical fiction, you don't get an awful lot of historical fiction set in the 15th century, and this one is 1431, so it's pre-Tudor. And I really like that idea. It's a dangerous time for a woman to be defiant. Isn't any time dangerous for a woman to be defiant? England's been fighting France for 100 years. The men are power hungry, and men within a corrupt government manipulate a weak king and name Cecily's husband, York's loyal duke, an enemy. As the king's grasp on sanity weakens, plots to destroy York take root. So she's kind of at the mercy, presumably, of all the political machinations that are going on around her. I listened to Anya Seaton's Catherine on Audible recently. I don't like rereading books, but I've been revisiting books through listening to them for a while now. And Catherine was one of my absolutely favourite books when I was a younger teenager. And I remember reading it several times. It's a great big tome. I should have got it off the shelf. It's there somewhere. Is it handy? Can't see with these goggles on. I don't think it's within grasp, I'm afraid. But anyway, I loved it, and that, you know, is set in that sort of era, and it really, Chaucer is one of the characters in it. So actually, it's probably earlier, isn't it? But anyway, I really enjoyed that, and I think this will sort of maybe fill that kind of gap in my reading. Whatever gap needs filling, I don't know. And then, of course, as I said, I had my birthday earlier this month. So I had a lovely present from a really lovely friend of mine who I walk with every week in the beautiful Wire Forest. He's called Paul, and he bought me this fantastic book. It's called Femina by Janina Ramirez, and it's a new history of the Middle Ages through the women written out of it. So again, this book seems to be striving to do the thing that Kate Moss has been doing with her Warrior Queens, and I can never remember the whole title, something revolutionaries. It's described as a firecracker, somehow captured between two covers by Lucy Worsley. Again, amazing historian, that sells it for me. And we had a good look through it, and there are all sorts of sources that are illustrated, and it seems to take a sort of topic by topic approach, which, because it's an era in history that I don't know an awful lot about, I really like that. I wouldn't necessarily want to follow some sort of linear progression through the century. So we've got a chapter called Movers and Shakers, we've got Decision Makers, we've got Polymaths and Scientists. When the word polymath is used, sadly, it isn't pictures of women that pop into my head. That's so wrong. It just looks a really interesting book. Again, when I'll get around to reading it, I don't know. I will do it at some point. But yeah, love the idea of it. And interestingly, Caitlin Moran loved it. Now, I find that quite fascinating, because I wouldn't necessarily have seen her and again, my ignorance, I'm sure, as a reader of historical fiction. So there we go. And then this, my lovely son, Simon Savage, gifted to me as a birthday treat. And it's called Gunflower by Laura Jean McKay. And he ranks it's one of the best collections of short stories that he's read recently. It won the Arthur C. Clarke Award. And I think a lot of it is to do with animals, and sort of looking at things from an animal's perspective, or animals having voices, which often is something that I find problematic. So it'll be interesting to see how I get on with this one. And so there's something lovely, I don't know what it is about the cover. I think it's got a painting by somebody like Stubbs. Oh, that shows my ignorance. Cow at a Pond by Gerard Builders. Not come across him. Very sort of quintessentially, certainly English looking scene. But yeah, you've got this kind of modern, almost Japanese sort of symbol on the front. So that's quite, like the idea of that. And then Simon and I were in London and picked up in the fantastic Oxfam bookshop. I love Oxfam bookshops. This is the Untelling by Tayari Jones. Now, Tayari Jones won the Women's Prize for Fiction some years ago, and Simon said, oh, he spotted this straight away and said, this is a version that we don't see. It's an American edition, apparently. Aria is no stranger to tragedy. As a young girl, she and her older sister and mother survived a car crash, then took the lives of their father and beloved baby sister. And although relations with her remaining family are strained, she's done her best to establish a solid, normal life for herself. Living in Atlanta and teaching literacy to girls who've fallen on hard times. But now she has a secret that she's not yet ready to share with Dwayne, her devoted boyfriend, or Rochelle, her roommate and friend. So I like the idea of the kind of the secret there. Aria's pregnant, or so she thinks. Oh, that's intriguing, isn't it? The truth is about to make her question her every assumption and reevaluate the life she's worked so hard to build for herself, as it sends her reeling in a direction she had no idea she was destined to go. So that sounds captivating. So I'm really looking forward to that. I love the colour. I've always loved botanical drawings, and that's looks like a camellia, I think. I'll probably be wrong again. Oh, it doesn't say. But yeah, beautiful. It's actually a photograph. I realised. I kind of assumed it was one of those Victorian drawings, but it's a photo. And then I listened to the wonderful Natalie Haynes. She was on the Women's Prize for Fiction podcast, which is called Bookshelfie. If you don't listen to it, I really recommend it. And she was asked a question by the lovely Vic Hope. She was asked who was the writer who has most influenced her writing, which I think is a great question. And she answered it straight away. There wasn't a moment of hesitation. And she said, Jorge Luis Borges. And I thought, well, that's really fascinating because I've never read anything of his. And she referenced this story, which is called, because I can't remember anything at the moment, as you can see. What's it called? Something about Asterion. It's called, is it The House of Asterion? Yeah, The House of Asterion. Now, Asterion, if you didn't know, is the name of the Minotaur. And she raved about this story because it's only a page long. You can Google it. You can get a free PDF, print it off, read it online. But I did. And I also read it to my friend Paul, who I was just talking about, who bought me that lovely book because he's very literary. And we read it together, and it is the most mind-blowing story. How somebody can build a world in what is essentially less than 2 pages. And also there's an amazing kind of twist in it. I'm not going to say any more in case you rush off to look it up if you've not read it. So if you have come across it and you're aware of it, well done you, because it's passed me by, shows my, again, unendingly showing my ignorance. So when I was in Foyles with Simon, I picked up a copy of Labyrinths because having read that short story, it whet my appetite for more. So I really want to read this now. And also in the same shop, I picked up Xinran. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The Good Women of China. And again, this is a book that's been vaguely on my radar for a while. So she, if I remember rightly, she presented a radio program in China, and she invited women to talk about themselves. And of course, this was really groundbreaking, and I think it revealed all sorts of interesting stories about, centuries of obedience to their fathers, husbands, sons, followed by years of political turmoil, had made women terrified of talking openly about their feelings, and she encourages them to do it. So I think this book is the story of how she got round all the restrictions and actually managed to go ahead and do that. And again, with non-fiction November in mind, I thought this was a time that I ought to try and get around to reading it again. Will I? I don't know. There's several weeks of November left. We shall see. But yeah, I don't know. I love the way on the back of this, it's got all the Chinese symbols for and if you can see, for words relating to women. So we've got female first, female plus housework, that's the symbol for woman. Female plus kindness is the symbol for mother, and female plus tradition plus female plus kindness equals girl. You know, it's just even the symbols for the words speak volumes about what the words mean to that society and that culture, or have meant, perhaps I should say. Yeah, so compassionate but unsentimental, dramatising the stories like gripping fiction. Sounds good, doesn't it? So I hope you've all had equally lovely hauls or acquired books from your library or whatever it might be, stacked up ready to read over in November. Certainly here today, November is offering up its greyness, which is why I've got all this illumination around me today. You'd think I was recording at night, wouldn't you? Anyway, take care, everybody. I look forward to speaking to you soon. I hope all is well. Yeah, bye.